The year is 1987. Imagine tuning your radio dial late one night, the static crackling like a dying fire. You're expecting music, maybe a late-night talk show. Instead, you stumble upon a broadcast that will haunt you for the rest of your life. This is the story of a radio show that went live, and its host, who never returned. Tonight, we delve into one of the most chilling mysteries in broadcast history: the alleged haunted radio transmission from a small, now-defunct station, WBRK, nestled deep in the Appalachian Mountains. The date was October the 27th, 1987. The host was a man named Arthur Bell, known for his soothing voice and his love of local folklore. His show, Whispers in the Static, was a favorite among night owls and truckers passing through the winding mountain roads. But on this particular night, the whispers became screams. What you are about to hear is a reconstruction based on recovered audio fragments and eyewitness accounts from listeners who were tuned in that fateful evening. The original master tapes vanished along with Arthur Bell himself. For decades, this story was just a local legend, a ghost story told around campfires. But recently, a series of cassette recordings made by a listener that night have surfaced. The quality is poor, degraded by time, but the terror they contain is crystal clear. The show started like any other. Arthur's familiar, warm voice greeted his listeners. He was discussing local ghost stories, a fitting topic just days before Halloween. He opened the phone lines for listeners to share their own experiences. The first few calls were standard fare: tales of strange lights in the sky, odd noises in old houses. Arthur handled them with his usual calm and professional curiosity. But then, about 30 minutes into the broadcast, the first strange call came through. The line was filled with an unnerving, high-pitched static, a sound unlike normal signal interference. Through the noise, a faint voice could be heard. It was small, like a child's, and it was repeating a single chilling phrase. Listeners later described it as sounding like it was coming from a great distance, or perhaps from somewhere else entirely. Let's listen to the first recovered fragment. The audio has been cleaned up as much as possible, but be warned, it is disturbing. Audio clip. A faint, childlike voice whispering, "He's not alone," amidst heavy static. Arthur, ever the professional, tried to rationalize it. He chalked it up to a bad connection, a prank call perhaps. But you can hear the slight tremor in his voice as he disconnected the line. He tried to move on, to bring the show back to a sense of normalcy. He put on a music track, but listeners reported that the music sounded distorted, playing at a slower speed, the notes bending into a mournful dirge. When Arthur came back on the air, his tone had shifted. The warmth was gone, replaced by a palpable tension. He tried to take another call. This time the static was even louder, almost deafening. And through it, another voice emerged. This one was different. It was deep, guttural, and filled with a cold rage. It didn't speak words, but rather a series of harsh, guttural sounds that made the hair on your arms stand up. Several listeners reported that their pets began to whine and bark uncontrollably at this point. One listener, a long-haul trucker, claimed his radio's display flickered and died the moment the voice came on. Here is the second fragment. "I must warn you again. This is deeply unsettling." Audio clip. A burst of loud, aggressive static with a deep, guttural, non-human sound underneath. After that call, Arthur was audibly shaken. His breathing was heavy, and he stumbled over his words. He said, "Folks, we seem to be having some significant technical difficulties tonight. I'm not sure what that was." He tried to laugh it off, but the sound was hollow, nervous. He announced he was going to take a short break. The station's identification jingle played, but it was warped and distorted, like a recording being chewed up by a tape machine. This is where the story takes its darkest turn. According to the recovered recordings, Arthur never came back from that break. Instead, the open mic seemed to pick up sounds from inside the broadcast booth. Faintly at first, then growing louder, was the sound of whispering. Not from the phone lines, but from inside the room with him. The whispers were layered, numerous voices all speaking at once, unintelligible but filled with a terrifying urgency. You could hear the sound of a chair scraping against the floor, as if Arthur had stood up abruptly. Then a sharp, choked gasp. Arthur's voice, now filled with pure terror, could be heard saying one thing clearly. "Who's there? You're not supposed to be in here." The whispers grew louder, swirling into a cacophony of sound. The last thing the listeners heard from Arthur Bell was a single blood-curdling scream, abruptly cut off by a blast of white noise. The station remained on the air, broadcasting nothing but that harsh, unrelenting static for nearly an hour before it suddenly went silent. The next morning, when the station manager arrived to open up, he found the broadcast booth empty. Arthur Bell's coffee was still warm on the console. His car was in the parking lot. All of his personal belongings were there. The only thing missing was Arthur himself. The door to the studio was locked from the inside. An immediate investigation was launched. Police searched the surrounding woods for weeks, but found no trace of him. They questioned the station staff and the listeners who called the police that night. Everyone told the same story. The strange calls, the distorted music, the whispering, and finally, the scream. The official report concluded that Arthur Bell had likely abandoned his post and disappeared, possibly due to a personal crisis. They dismissed the haunted broadcast as a series of technical malfunctions combined with mass hysteria. But how do you explain the door being locked from the inside? How do you explain the chorus of whispers captured on that final recording when Arthur was known to always work alone? For years, the legend of the haunted broadcast persisted. The station, WBRK, went off the air a few years later, unable to shake its macabre reputation. The building now stands abandoned, a silent monument to the night a man's voice was stolen by the static. Paranormal investigators who have studied the case believe the station, built on land with a dark local history, may have acted as a conduit. They suggest that on that night, something was drawn to Arthur's show about local folklore, something ancient and malevolent. Did he, by opening the phone lines to stories of the supernatural, inadvertently open a door to something far more real and dangerous? Did the voices on the line belong not to pranksters, but to entities drawn to the energy of the broadcast? The final audio fragment is perhaps the most chilling of all. It was recovered from the very end of the listener's cassette tape, just before the static cut out. After Arthur's scream and the blast of noise, the static seems to momentarily clear, and in that brief moment of clarity, a single voice can be heard. It's the same childlike voice from the first call. And it says, one, final, terrifying thing. Audio clip, static briefly clears, and the childlike voice whispers clearly, "He's with us now." Arthur Bell was never seen again. His disappearance remains an unsolved mystery. Was it a tragic case of a man who simply walked away from his life? Or did he become a permanent part of the static, a voice lost in the haunted airwaves, a victim of the very whispers he sought to understand? We may never know for sure. The only certainty is that on a cold October night in 1987, a radio broadcast went live, and its host became a ghost story. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the static. If you found this story as chilling as I did, please hit that like button and subscribe for more dives into the unknown. Stay safe, and always be careful what you listen to in the dark.